the ghost signals. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Union floated in the void between star systems, a massive station built from the combined efforts of 47 species. Today the hall glowed with celebration. Banners from countless worlds hung from the vaulted ceiling, and representatives from every corner of known space had gathered for a historic occasion. Chancellor Vorith stood at the central podium, his crystalline form refracting the light into dancing rainbows across the assembled crowd. He was a Carewell, one of the oldest species in the Union, and his voice resonated through the chamber with the authority of centuries. 500 years ago, Vorith began, his words translated instantly into dozens of languages. The galaxy faced its greatest crisis. A young species called humanity had emerged from their small blue world. They were aggressive, expansionist, and dangerously unpredictable. Their wars had scarred their own planet. Their hunger for resources knew no bounds. They represented a threat to the peace we had built over millennia. The delegates listened in silence. Even after 5 centuries, the memory of the human conflict remained fresh in galactic consciousness. The Union made a difficult decision, Vorith continued. We could not allow humanity to spread their violence across the stars. A coalition fleet was assembled. We traveled to their home system. We gave them one chance to surrender their weapons and accept Union oversight. They refused. Vorith paused, letting the weight of history settle over the chamber. What followed was swift and necessary. The human fleets were destroyed. Their colonies were dismantled. Their home world, Earth, was placed under quarantine. For 50 years we maintained the blockade. Then, without warning, all human signals ceased. Their cities went dark. Their transmissions stopped. When our scout teams finally investigated, they found nothing. The humans had vanished. Their world was empty, as if they had never existed at all. A murmur rippled through the assembly. The mysterious disappearance of humanity had been debated for centuries. Some believed they had destroyed themselves in a final act of defiance. Others thought they had found a way to escape to some unknown corner of the galaxy. But most accepted the official conclusion. Humanity had simply died out, unable to survive without their technology and infrastructure. Today, Vorith declared, his voice rising with triumph, we celebrate 500 years of peace. 500 years without human aggression. 500 years of prosperity and cooperation. The threat is gone. The galaxy is safe. The assembly erupted in applause. Delegates rose from their seats, celebrating the anniversary with genuine joy. But in the back of the chamber, one figure remained seated. Dr. Nalith was a Viridian, a species known for their analytical minds and scientific excellence. Her 6 eyes studied the celebration with skepticism. Something about the official story had always bothered her. Species did not simply vanish. 50 years of quarantine, then nothing. No bodies, no ruins, no trace. It made no sense. While the celebration continued, Nalith quietly left the assembly hall. She had work to do. Her laboratory was located in the lower levels of the station, far from the noise and ceremony above. Nalith had spent the past decade studying old records from the human conflict, trying to understand what had really happened 5 centuries ago. The official archives were incomplete, filled with gaps and redactions. Someone had deliberately obscured the truth. She activated her primary terminal and pulled up the file she had been compiling. Reports of strange occurrences in the Forbidden Sector, the region of space where human territory had once existed. The Union had declared it off-limits, claiming dangerous radiation made it unsuitable for exploration. But Nalith had found something curious in the shipping logs. Over the past century, 23 vessels had vanished near the Forbidden Sector. Commercial freighters, scientific expeditions, even a military patrol. All of them had disappeared without distress signals, without debris, without explanation. The Union blamed navigation errors and equipment failures. But 23 ships? That was not coincidence. Her terminal chimed. An incoming message, heavily encrypted. Nalith hesitated, then opened it. The message was brief. Dr. Nalith. I have information about the Forbidden Sector. Meet me at Dock 47. Come alone. Destroy this message. Could be a trap. Could be nothing. But Nalith's curiosity overpowered her caution. She wiped the message from her system and made her way through the station's winding corridors. Dock 47 was in the industrial section, used primarily for cargo transfers and maintenance. At this hour, it was nearly deserted. Nalith found a lone figure waiting beside a small transport vessel. He was Terrasian, a reptilian species with dark green scales and bright amber eyes. Dr. Nalith, the stranger said, his voice low and urgent. Thank you for coming. My name is Captain Drex. I command a salvage vessel. 3 weeks ago, my crew responded to a distress beacon near the edge of the Forbidden Sector. You entered the Forbidden Sector? Nalith asked, surprised. That violates Union law. The beacon was from a Union research station, Drex replied. Station Epsilon 9. It had been missing for 5 years. We thought we might find survivors or at least recover the data cores. What we found was much worse. Drex handed her a small data device. Everything is on here. The station logs, visual recordings, sensor data. I tried to report it through official channels, but my transmission was blocked. Someone very powerful does not want this information to reach the public. That is why I came to you. Your research into the human conflict is well known in certain circles. Nalith took the device, her hands trembling slightly. What did you find on that station? Drex's amber eyes reflected genuine fear. Evidence that the humans did not die out, Doctor. Evidence that they are still out there. And evidence that they have been watching us for a very long time. Before Nalith could respond, alarms blared throughout the dock. Security forces poured in from multiple entrances, weapons drawn. Drex cursed and ran for his ship. Upload that data to the Union network, he shouted over his shoulder. Make sure everyone knows the truth. The security forces opened fire. Drex's ship launched in a burst of flame, taking damage but managing to escape into the void. Nalith barely had time to hide the data device before the guards surrounded her. She was taken to an interrogation room deep within the station's security complex. 4 hours she sat alone, wondering what information could be so dangerous that the Union would use force to suppress it. Finally the door opened. The figure who entered was not a security officer. It was someone far more important. Admiral Kester, head of Union military intelligence. His species, the Halveth, were massive beings with thick armor plating and multiple arms. He settled into the reinforced chair across from Nalith with a heavy sigh. Dr. Nalith, Kester said, his voice surprisingly gentle. You have stumbled into something very delicate. For your own safety, I need to know what Captain Drex gave you. He gave me nothing, Nalith lied. We barely spoke before your forces attacked. Kester studied her with his dark compound eyes. Doctor, please, do not play games. I know about your research. I know about the questions you have been asking. I even respect your dedication to truth. But some truths are too dangerous to reveal. Dangerous to whom? Nalith challenged. To the public? Or to the people who have been lying to us for 500 years? Kester was quiet for a long moment. Then he made a decision that would change everything. Come with me, he said. There is something you need to see. He led her through secure corridors to a classified section of the station Nalith had never known existed. They entered a command center filled with monitors and tactical displays. Officers worked at dozens of stations, tracking information that flowed across the screens in constant streams. Kester brought up a star chart showing the Forbidden Sector and the surrounding regions. Red markers dotted the display, each one representing a missing vessel. 23 ships, Nalith whispered. 37, Kester corrected. The official number is incomplete. We have been hiding the full extent of the disappearances to prevent panic. And it is not just ships anymore, Doctor. 3 months ago we lost contact with a mining colony. 4,000 inhabitants. When we sent a team to investigate, the colony was empty. No bodies, no signs of struggle. Everyone just gone. Nalith felt a chill run through her. What is happening out there? Kester pulled up another display. This one showed sensor readings, strange energy patterns that pulsed and shifted in ways that defied conventional physics. For the past decade, we have detected anomalies in the Forbidden Sector. Signals that match no known technology. Warp signatures that appear and disappear without ships. At first, we thought it was natural phenomena. Nebula interference or quantum fluctuations. But the patterns are too regular, too purposeful. You think it is the humans? Nalith said. Kester nodded slowly. Station Epsilon 9 was established 15 years ago as a covert listening post. Its mission was to monitor the Forbidden Sector for any signs of human activity. The last transmission we received from them was fragmentary and corrupted. But we managed to recover one phrase. He played an audio file. Through heavy static, a terrified voice spoke 3 words, "They are coming." Nalith stared at the Admiral. Why are you telling me this? Why not announce it to the Union? Because we do not know what we are dealing with, Kester admitted. If the humans survived, if they have been hiding for 5 centuries, then they have been preparing, building, advancing. They could have technology far beyond ours. They could have fleets we cannot imagine. If we announce this without proof, we will cause panic. If we announce it with proof, we might provoke a war we cannot win. So what do you propose? Kester brought up a new image. A sleek vessel built for speed and stealth. I am assembling a small investigation team. Scientists, military specialists, diplomats. We will enter the forbidden sector officially. We will find out what happened to the humans. And we will determine if they pose a threat. He looked directly at Nalith. I want you on that team, Doctor. Your knowledge of human history could be invaluable. Nalith thought about the data device hidden in her quarters. She thought about Captain Drex fleeing into the darkness. She thought about 500 years of lies. I accept, she said. 3 days later, the investigation fleet departed from Union space. 5 vessels, carefully chosen for their advanced sensors and defensive capabilities. Nalith stood on the bridge of the lead ship, watching as they approached the boundary of the forbidden sector. The radiation warnings that supposedly protected this region proved to be false. The sensors detected nothing dangerous. Just empty space, dark and cold and silent. Proceeding to the coordinates of Station Epsilon 9, announced the ship's pilot, a young Carwell named Savith. They traveled deeper into the sector. Stars that had once been part of human space surrounded them. Nalith recognized some of the names from old maps. Tau Ceti, Epsilon Eridani, Alpha Centauri. Colonies that humanity had established in those brief decades before the Union intervened. The sensors detected something ahead. A structure floating in the darkness. Station Epsilon 9. The station was intact, but it showed no signs of life. No power signatures, no heat, no transmissions. It simply drifted through the void like a tomb. Send in the reconnaissance team, ordered Commander Vrax, the military officer in charge of the fleet. I want full sensor sweeps and visual documentation. Be cautious. Nalith joined the team boarding the station. They wore environmental suits and carried scanning equipment. The airlock opened with a hiss of escaping atmosphere. Inside, the station was dark except for their suit lights. Emergency lighting had long since failed. They moved through corridors lined with empty rooms and abandoned equipment. Everything was in perfect order. No damage, no signs of battle. They found the first message in the main laboratory. Someone had written on the wall using what looked like marker. The words were in the old Union Standard language. We were wrong about everything. Further into the station they found more messages. On walls, on windows, on display screens. All of them written by the station's crew in their final days. They never left. They were waiting. 500 years in the dark. Now they remember. Nalith's hands shook as she documented each message. The crew of this station had discovered something terrible. Something that had driven them to abandon their post and flee. Or perhaps they had not fled at all. In the station's command center, they found the main computer core. Most of the data had been wiped, but Nalith managed to recover fragments. Sensor logs showing massive structures hidden in nearby nebulae. Energy readings that spiked off the scale. And visual recordings. She played the final recording made by the station commander. The image showed a human woman, middle-aged, with dark hair and determined eyes. She wore a uniform Nalith did not recognize. To whoever finds this message, the woman said, her voice calm despite the fear in her eyes. My name is Commander Sarah Chin of Station Epsilon 9. We have made first contact with something impossible. The humans did not die. They did not leave. They retreated to the darkness beyond our sensors and they built something magnificent and terrifying. The image flickered as power failures disrupted the recording. They call themselves the Remnant. 500 years ago, when the Union blockaded Earth, a secret fleet escaped. Thousands of ships, millions of people. They fled beyond mapped space and found sanctuary in a region called the Abyssal Reach. For 5 centuries they have been growing, advancing, preparing. Chin looked directly into the camera. They are coming back. Not for revenge, they say, but for recognition. They want the galaxy to acknowledge what was done to them. They want justice. And they have the power to demand it. God help us all. The recording ended. Nalith stood in the silent command center, her mind racing. Before she could fully process what she had learned, the ship's emergency channel crackled to life. All teams return immediately. Commander Vrax's voice was tight with tension. Our sensors have detected multiple warp signatures. Large vessels approaching fast. We need to leave now. The team rushed back to their shuttle. As they docked with the main ship, Nalith reached the bridge in time to see the tactical display. Dozens of signatures were appearing throughout the sector. Ships materializing from warp space in perfect formation. How many? Vrax demanded. 300, the sensor officer reported, disbelief in her voice. No, wait. 500. They keep coming. Sir, the energy readings are unlike anything in our database. These vessels are enormous. The view screen activated. Space itself seemed to tear open as massive ships emerged from faster-than-light travel. They were dark, angular, covered in weapon emplacements and armor plating. Human design, but evolved far beyond anything in the Union's historical records. At the center of the formation, a vessel larger than any Union dreadnought hung in the darkness. On its hull, painted in letters that glowed with their own light, was a single word. Remembrance. We are being hailed, the communications officer reported. All frequencies. They want us to hear this. Put it through, Vrax said quietly. The screen changed. A human face appeared. A man with silver hair and scars that marked decades of conflict. He wore a black uniform with insignia that spoke of high command. Behind him, dozens of human officers stood at attention. Vessels of the Galactic Union, the man said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. I am Fleet Admiral Marcus Kane of the Terran Remnant. 500 years ago you hunted us. You cornered us. You believed you destroyed us. You were wrong. He paused, letting the silence stretch. We are the descendants of those who escaped. We are the children of Earth, born in exile, raised in darkness. We have watched your celebrations. We have heard your lies. We have waited with the patience of those who have nothing but time. Kane's eyes, cold and hard as steel, stared out from the screen. The waiting is over. We have returned to claim what was stolen from us. Not your worlds, not your resources. Something far more valuable. The truth. And the galaxy will hear it whether you wish it or not. The transmission ended. The human fleet remained perfectly still, weapons powered but not targeting. Waiting. On the bridge of the Union vessel, no one spoke. The impossible had become real. Humanity had survived. They had thrived. And now they had come home. In her quarters that night, Nalith finally examined the data device Captain Drex had given her. What she found there would change everything she thought she knew about the human conflict. About the Union. About 500 years of carefully constructed lies. The humans had not been the aggressors at all. They had been the victims. And someone in the Union had known it all along. The ghost signals had been a warning. Now the ghosts had returned in force. And the galaxy would never be the same. The return. The emergency session of the Galactic Union Council convened within hours of the human fleet's appearance. The Grand Assembly Hall, so recently filled with celebration, now thrummed with panic and confusion. Representatives from 47 species shouted over one another, demanding answers, assigning blame, proposing desperate strategies. Chancellor Vorith stood at the central podium, his crystalline form flickering with agitation. His carefully constructed narrative of 500 years had shattered in a single moment. The humans were not extinct. They had been watching, waiting, growing stronger in the darkness beyond known space. Admiral Kester stepped forward, his massive Halveth frame commanding immediate attention. The human fleet numbers over 800 vessels now, he reported, his voice cutting through the chaos. More ships arrive every hour. They have established a perimeter around the Forbidden Sector and are broadcasting their message on every known frequency. The entire galaxy knows they have returned. What do they want? Demanded Ambassador Threll, a Voxian whose species prided themselves on diplomatic solutions. Have they made demands? Issued threats. They have requested a formal audience with the Union Council, Kester replied. They wish to present evidence of what they call crimes against humanity. They claim the official history of the human conflict is false. A wave of angry voices erupted. Lies, shouted several delegates. Human propaganda. But Dr. Nalith stood from her seat in the observer section. It is not propaganda, she called out, her voice surprisingly strong. I have seen their evidence. And I have found corroborating documentation in our own classified archives. The humans are telling the truth. The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to the Viridian scientist. Chancellor Vortha's crystalline form darkened. Dr. Nalith, you have no authority to address this council. Return to your seat immediately. I have every authority, Nalith responded, walking down the aisle toward the central floor. Because I have proof that this council, or at least certain members of its leadership, have been lying to the galaxy for 5 centuries. And those lies may cost us everything. She activated a holographic projector, pulling data directly from the device Captain Drex had given her. Images filled the air above the assembly. Documents marked with the highest security classifications. Communications between Union officials from 500 years ago. Video recordings that had supposedly been destroyed. The official history states that humanity was aggressive and expansionist. Nalith began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was revealing. That they refused peaceful Union oversight and forced our hand. But these documents tell a different story. She displayed an intercepted human transmission from 497 years ago. A message from Earth's government to the Union Council, pleading for time. Requesting a diplomatic summit. Offering to limit their expansion and accept observers in exchange for being left alone to develop at their own pace. The humans asked for peace, Nalith continued. They asked for compromise. This message was received by the Council. It was discussed in closed session. And it was rejected. More documents appeared. Military planning files showing the Union fleet had been assembled months before the official first contact. Strategic assessments describing humanity as a potential economic competitor that needed to be neutralized before they could establish themselves as a power in the region. This was not about security, Nalith said, her 6 eyes blazing with righteous anger. This was about economics. About preventing competition. The human colonies were rich in rare minerals. Their technology, though primitive by our standards, showed unique innovations that threatened several established industries. Certain council members, certain corporations, saw an opportunity to eliminate a potential rival and claim their resources. Chancellor Vorith slammed his appendage on the podium. This is outrageous speculation based on stolen, classified information. Guards, remove Dr. Nalith immediately. But Admiral Kester stepped between the guards and Nalith. Let her finish, he commanded. I have seen these files. I have verified their authenticity. The doctor speaks the truth and the council will hear it. Nalith nodded gratefully and continued. The blockade of Earth was not a peacekeeping measure. It was a siege designed to break human resistance. When the humans attempted to send supply ships to their struggling colonies, those ships were destroyed. When they tried to break the blockade to reach their own people, they were slaughtered. The Union did not give humanity a chance to surrender. They gave them a choice between slow death and extinction. She displayed the final, most damning piece of evidence. A recording from the council chamber 500 years ago. In it, Chancellor Vorith's predecessor openly discussed the plan to allow the human problem to resolve itself through attrition and despair. But some humans escaped, Nalith said softly. A secret fleet launched in desperation. 30,000 ships carrying 15 million people. They fled beyond mapped space, beyond our sensors, to a region so remote and hostile that we assumed no one could survive there. We were wrong. The holographic display shifted, showing sensor data from the remnant fleet. For 500 years, humanity has existed in what they call the abyssal reach. A cluster of systems surrounded by radiation storms and gravitational anomalies that make conventional navigation impossible. The humans learned to thrive there. They built cities in the darkness. They developed technology specifically designed for survival in the harshest environments imaginable. And they remembered what was done to them. The chamber remained silent as the full weight of the revelation settled over the assembled delegates. 500 years of celebration had been based on genocide. 500 years of peace had been built on the graves of billions. Ambassador Threll finally spoke, his voice shaken. If this is true, what do the humans want from us now? Revenge. Before anyone could answer, the chamber's main communication system activated without authorization. Every screen, every holographic projector, every audio channel came to life simultaneously. The human fleet had bypassed Union security and taken direct control of their systems. Fleet Admiral Marcus Kane's face appeared, larger than life, looking down at the assembled council. Not revenge, he said, answering Threll's question directly. Justice, recognition, and a reckoning. Kane stood on what appeared to be the bridge of the massive vessel called Remembrance. Behind him, vast windows showed the human fleet spread across the stars in perfect formation. For 500 years we have lived in exile. We built our civilization from nothing in the most hostile region of space imaginable. We lost billions to starvation, disease, and the brutal conditions of the abyssal reach. But we survived. And we thrived. The image changed, showing human cities built inside asteroids, space stations of incredible size and complexity, agricultural domes that fed millions, shipyards that constructed vessels of war and peace. The remnant had created an entire civilization invisible to Union sensors. We watched you, Kane continued. We sent scout ships through the radiation storms. We intercepted your communications. We saw you celebrate our destruction. We heard your lies about who we were and what we had done. And we planned for this day. The display shifted again, showing technical specifications that made Admiral Kester's eyes widen in shock. The human ships were not just more advanced than Union vessels. They were generations ahead. Their weapon systems utilized quantum disruption technology that could bypass shields entirely. Their engines bent space in ways Union physicists had deemed impossible. Their defensive capabilities included adaptive armor that learned from each attack and reconfigured itself in real time. We did not spend 500 years hiding, Kane said. We spent 500 years preparing. Every human child born in the remnant was raised with a single purpose: to be ready for the day we could return home. Not to Earth, which we know is likely uninhabitable after your blockade, but to the galaxy that cast us out. To demand that you acknowledge what you did. Chancellor Vorith found his voice. What exactly are you demanding, Admiral Kane? Kane's expression hardened. First, full disclosure. You will release all classified documents related to the human conflict. The galaxy will know the truth. Second, reparations. The Union seized human colonies, human resources, human technology. You built your prosperity on what you stole from us. You will make amends. Third, territory. The systems that once belonged to humanity will be returned. We will rebuild our worlds under our own governance. And if we refuse? Vorith asked, though the answer was obvious. Then we will take what is ours, Kane replied simply. We did not build this fleet for display, Chancellor. We built it for war. A war we are prepared to fight and win. But we would prefer peace. We would prefer to rejoin the galactic community as equals, not conquerors. The choice is yours. The transmission paused, but Kane was not finished. However, I should inform you that this choice has a deadline. You have 72 hours to respond. After that time, if you have not agreed to our terms, we will begin operations to reclaim our territory by force. We will start with the former human colony of New Terra, which you renamed Prosperity Station. I believe several council members have lucrative mining contracts there. The threat was clear. The remnant would not be denied, and they had the power to back up their demands. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in turmoil. Some delegates called for immediate military mobilization. Others urged acceptance of the human terms. Still others proposed negotiations to find a middle ground. Admiral Kester pulled up tactical assessments on his personal display. The numbers were devastating. Even if the Union assembled its entire military force, current projections gave them less than a 30% chance of victory against the remnant fleet. And that assumed the humans had not held back even more advanced vessels in reserve, which intelligence suggested they had. We cannot win a military confrontation, Kester announced, his voice cutting through the arguments. The humans have spent 5 centuries focused on one goal. They have technology we cannot counter. They have ships we cannot match. And they have the moral high ground. If we refuse their demands, they will destroy us. And they will be justified in doing so. You suggest we surrender? Vorith demanded. I suggest we acknowledge reality, Kester replied. We committed atrocities against humanity. We built our peace on their graves. They have every right to demand justice. We should give it to them willingly rather than having it taken by force. The debate raged for hours. Delegates argued from every conceivable angle. Some admitted guilt and supported immediate acceptance of human terms. Others clung to the old narrative, insisting the humans remained a threat that needed to be contained. Still others worried about what conceding to human demands would mean for Union authority. While the council argued, Dr. Nalith received a private communication. It came directly from the remnant fleet, encoded specifically for her. The message was from Fleet Admiral Kane himself. Dr. Nalith, your research into the true history of the human conflict has not gone unnoticed. We have been monitoring your work for the past 3 years. You are one of the few in the Union who sought truth rather than convenient fiction. For that reason, I would like to extend an invitation. Come to Remembrance. Meet with our leadership. See what we have built. Perhaps you can help bridge the gap between our peoples. Nalith stared at the message for a long time. Accepting would mean leaving Union space, boarding a human vessel, placing herself entirely in their hands. It could be a trap. It could be propaganda. Or it could be an opportunity to prevent a war. She sent her acceptance. 12 hours later, Nalith stood in the shuttle bay of Remembrance, surrounded by human officers who watched her with expressions ranging from curiosity to distrust. Admiral Kane greeted her personally, extending his hand in the traditional human gesture of greeting. Nalith studied his hand for a moment, then carefully mimicked the gesture, clasping his hand with 2 of her appendages. Welcome aboard, Doctor, Kane said. I imagine this is strange for you. Meeting the ghosts you have been researching. Strange does not begin to describe it, Nalith admitted. I have spent years studying human history. But all my data ended 500 years ago. I have no idea who you have become since then. Kane smiled, though it did not reach his eyes. Then let me show you. He led her through the massive vessel. Remembrance was not just a warship. It was a mobile city home to over 50,000 people. The corridors were wide and well lit, lined with what looked like art galleries and parks. Nalith saw human families walking together, children playing in recreation areas, scientists working in laboratories that would be the envy of any Union facility. We built the Remnant to be self-sufficient, Kane explained as they walked. We could not rely on anyone but ourselves. Every ship in our fleet is designed to function independently for decades if necessary. We have hydroponic farms, recycling systems that waste nothing, medical facilities with technology you have never seen. We had to reinvent human civilization from the ground up. They entered what Kane called the Memorial Hall. The vast chamber was lined with holographic displays, each one showing images and names. Billions of names. Billions of faces. These are the humans who died because of the Union blockade, Kane said quietly. On Earth, in the colonies, in the Exodus fleet during those first terrible years in the abyssal reach. 15 billion souls. We remember every single one. Their names are carved into the core of this ship. When I say we will never forget, Dr. Nalith, I mean it literally. It is impossible for us to forget. We carry our dead with us always. Nalith felt something she had not expected. Shame. Deep, burning shame for what her people had done. I am sorry, she whispered. I know it means nothing. I know words cannot undo what was done. But I am truly sorry. Kane looked at her with something like respect. Words matter more than you think, Doctor. You are the first Union citizen to apologize for the genocide. The first to acknowledge it even happened. That is worth something. He led her to a conference room where other human leaders waited. Scientists, diplomats, military commanders, civilian representatives. They spent hours sharing information, showing Nalith the full extent of what the Remnant had achieved. The technology they had developed. The culture they had built. The determination that had sustained them through centuries of hardship. We do not want to destroy the Union, Kane finally said. Despite everything, we recognize that the galaxy needs some form of cooperative government. We simply want our place in it. As equals, not victims. As partners, not subordinates. The Council will not give up power easily, Nalith warned. There are too many species with too much invested in the current structure. Then they will have to be convinced, Kane replied. That is where you come in, Doctor. You have credibility in the Union. You have proven your dedication to truth. Help us make our case. Help us avoid a war that will devastate both our peoples. Nalith considered the request. She thought about the lies she had uncovered. The truth she had discovered. The choice facing the galaxy. I will help, she said finally. But not just for the Remnant. For everyone. Because a war between the Union and humanity would destroy more than just our two civilizations. It would shatter the peace of the entire galaxy. Kane nodded. Then we have an accord, Doctor. Let us see if we can change history for the better this time. The 72-hour deadline approached rapidly. The Council remained divided, unable to reach consensus. Some species threatened to withdraw from the Union entirely if human demands were accepted. Others threatened the same if the demands were rejected. The carefully maintained alliance that had governed the galaxy for millennia was coming apart at the seams. With only hours remaining, Nalith returned to the Council chamber. But she did not return alone. Admiral Kane accompanied her, along with a delegation of Remnant representatives. It was the first time humans had set foot in the Union Assembly Hall in 500 years. The chamber fell silent as they entered. Kane stood at the central podium, flanked by his officers, facing the representatives of 47 species. Members of the Galactic Union, he began, his voice steady and clear. We have come to present our case one final time before the deadline expires. What followed was not a speech but a testimony. Kane, along with other Remnant representatives, shared their history. Not the sanitized version the Union had created, but the truth. They told of the desperate flight from Earth. The death of billions during the early years in the abyssal reach. The slow, painful process of building a new civilization from nothing. The generations born never knowing their ancestral home, raised on stories of a blue planet they would never see. They presented evidence, corroborated by Nalith's research, proving that humanity had sought peace and been denied. That the Union had acted not from fear but from greed. that the genocide had been planned and executed with cold calculation. But they also shared something unexpected. Recordings from the abyssal reach, showing human children learning about alien species. Human teachers explaining that not all members of the Union had supported the genocide. Human leaders debating whether revenge was justice or simply perpetuating a cycle of violence. "We have had 500 years to nurse our hatred," Kane said. 500 years to plan our vengeance. But hatred is not what kept us alive in the darkness. Hope did. Hope that one day we could return not as conquerors but as equals. Hope that the galaxy could be better than it was. Hope that we could build something together that honored our dead without creating more graves. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many delegates as possible. "We are not asking for charity. We are demanding justice. But justice does not have to mean destruction. It can mean recognition, reparation, reconciliation. It can mean building a future where no species ever suffers what humanity suffered. Where no civilization is cast into darkness for being different or inconvenient." Ambassador Thrall stood, his voice filled with emotion. "The Voxian people formally recognize the injustice done to humanity. We commit to supporting full disclosure of the truth and reparations as appropriate. We welcome the remnant back to the galactic community." One by one, other delegates rose. Not all of them, but enough. Species that had been junior members during the human conflict, that had opposed the genocide but been overruled by more powerful voices. Species that valued truth over comfortable lies. Species that saw an opportunity to reshape the Union into something better. Chancellor Vorath watched his carefully constructed consensus crumble. His species, the KRYLL, had led the coalition against humanity. They had profited enormously from seized human resources. Accepting the remnant's demands meant admitting guilt, paying reparations, and losing power. But the alternative was a war they could not win and the dissolution of the Union entirely. Finally, with minutes remaining before the deadline, Vorath spoke. "The Council recognizes the historical injustices committed against humanity. We accept the terms presented by the remnant. Full disclosure will begin immediately. Territory negotiations will commence. Reparations will be determined by an independent tribunal. And humanity will be granted full membership in the Galactic Union with all rights and privileges thereof." The chamber erupted. Some delegates applauded the decision. Others shouted protests. But the decision had been made. The humans had returned and the galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Kane nodded slowly, a weight lifting from his shoulders that had been there for his entire life. "The remnant accepts these terms," he said formally. "Let this be the beginning of a new era. Not one built on lies and graves, but on truth and mutual respect." As the session concluded, Kane and Nalith stood together watching the chaos of history being rewritten in real time. "Do you think it will work?" Nalith asked. "Can we truly move past 500 years of hatred and lies?" Kane considered the question carefully. "I do not know," he admitted. "There will be resistance. There will be those on both sides who cannot forgive or forget. But we have to try. Because the alternative is darkness, and humanity has lived in darkness long enough." 3 months later, the first human civilian ships began returning to the worlds their ancestors had settled. Not as conquerors but as homecomers. They found ruins, overgrown and weathered by centuries. But beneath the decay they found traces of the civilization that had been. Buildings that could be restored. Infrastructure that could be rebuilt. Hope that could be rekindled. Earth remained uninhabitable, scarred by the blockade and centuries of neglect. But the remnant had not come seeking to reclaim a dead world. They had come to build new ones. And this time they would not build alone. In Union space, the truth about the human conflict spread like fire across a dry forest. Some species reacted with shame and calls for accountability. Others denied or minimized the atrocities. But the conversation had begun, and it could not be stopped. The galaxy was learning to face its own dark history. Dr. Nalith was appointed to head the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, tasked with investigating not just the human conflict but other instances where the Union might have acted unjustly. Her work would take decades, perhaps centuries. But it was necessary work. The kind that built better futures. Admiral Kane retired from military service and took a position as the Remnant's first ambassador to the Union Council. His presence in the assembly hall, once unthinkable, became a symbol of how much had changed. And how much still needed to change. On the edge of known space, in the abyssal reach where humanity had survived the impossible, the last of the remnant fleet prepared to return home. They left behind automated stations to remember what they had endured. Monuments to the billions who had died and the millions who had persevered. Museums filled with artifacts from those terrible years, preserved so future generations would never forget the cost of hatred and fear. The captain of the last departing vessel sent a final transmission before engaging the warp drive. The darkness was our crucible. It made us what we are. We leave it now, but we carry its lessons with us. To all who come after, remember that survival is not enough. We must also choose to build, to hope, to forgive. Not because it is easy, but because it is the only way forward. The ship vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving the abyssal reach empty and silent once more. But the darkness was no longer a tomb. It was a monument, a reminder, a warning, and, perhaps most importantly, a testament to the extraordinary resilience of the human spirit. The galaxy had thought humanity fallen. They had been wrong. Humanity had not fallen. They had simply been waiting for the right moment to rise. And in rising, they had given the galaxy a chance to rise with them. To become something better than it had been. To build a future where no species would ever have to survive what humanity survived. The great experiment had begun. Not revenge but redemption. Not conquest but cooperation. Not hatred but hope. The ghosts had returned from the darkness. And they brought with them the possibility